And as the violence in Syria continues unabated, neighbouring Lebanon has seized a shipment of smuggled weapons destined for Syrian rebels. The sea-bound cash apparently came from Libya, which is backing the opponents of President Assad. This comes as the rebels step up their assault on government forces. Saturday saw the first insurgent attack from the sea, a day after a suicide bombing killed at least 9 people in the capital. Russia says the opposition is seeking to scuttle the UN-brokered ceasefire as the world body steps up its observer mission to Syria. Let's now get some more reaction from Franklin Lamb, a director of the NGO Americans Concerned for Middle East Peace, joining us now live from Beirut. Thank you for coming on RT today. The latest shipment of smuggled weapons intercepted by Lebanon. I mean, most would say it highlights a long-running issue here. Is it high time, do you think, for an international arms embargo on Syria?
Very interesting question. And this latest seizure of arms may be a major development in this uprising in Syria and what lies ahead for this reason. There is now an eyewitness today, Hassan Diab, who saw that ship, the Luftwaffe 2, flying a Sierra Leone flag, loaded in Benghazi. We know that Qatar and the Saudis have 5 warehouses that they control in the area of Benghazi, left over from arms that they shipped to Libya. The great suspicion is that these are arms that were left over from Libya. The craft was loaded there. There was to be 15 containers, but it turned out there were only, in fact, 3 that were filled with 150 tons of weapons. That ship went from Tripoli to Turkey, back to down to Egypt, and then to Libya, then to Tripoli, on the way to Tripoli, Lebanon, when it was seized. But what is remarkable about that adventure is that the Americans almost surely knew about it. NATO did. The Israelis didn't touch that ship this time, not this ship. UNIFIL has been in the hot seat repeatedly in Lebanon for appearing too biased in favor of Israel. They did not stop that ship. It seems very clear that with all the differences, and we could name 20 or more between the situation in Libya and the situation in Syria, the fundamental pillar of regime change is identical. This ship clearly headed for the so-called Free Syrian Army, as other shipments have come from Lebanon into Syria. The design is regime change, and that was done, one believes, overwhelming evidence in support of that regime change. So who's got to answer now is Washington, and certainly Brussels with NATO, what they know about that ship. I think
so as you say, I do apologise to interrupt you here, but what you're saying is very, very important. If I can just get to grips with this, so I understand, 5 warehouses of Libyan weapons left in Benghazi. One shipment of these weapons is essentially, as you say, allowed to try and get through to Syria, with Israel, America, and NATO turning a blind eye. Is that what you're saying?
And possibly UNIFIL. All of those governments involved have some serious questions facing them now, and we'll see if this ends up in the United Nations. Russia may play a role and demand, with this new friendship with China, that they get to the bottom of this. This is the latest development of it seems like a NATO plan or indirect NATO plan for regime change. And also designed, I think, to undermine the Kofi Annan 6-point plan. First, the Americans said, we've got to have a ceasefire, we've got to have a ceasefire. They wanted a ceasefire to give the rebels, the opposition, time to get armed, to get funded, to get organized. Now they don't want a ceasefire, and they're thwarting this plan.
Well, you raised the issue of Kofi Annan's 6-stage peace plan. Also, the UN bolstering its observer mission going on there in Syria. But certainly, as you're saying, with NATO being aware of this weapons shipment trying to get its way to Syria, Lebanon intercepts it, though. Some experts argue that the US and its allies are seeking to remove Assad, as you were saying a moment ago, only in order really to weaken Syria's key ally of Iran. How much do you read into that?
Oh, absolutely. When you consider the resistance stance and the alliance, the friendship between Iran and Syria, and Hamas and Hezbollah, this is just another aspect of the regime change project to weaken and to break that Syrian-Iranian connection. Without that, and then the Americans are thwarted, and of course, they're already under enormous pressure to leave Afghanistan. This is one of their last hopes, I think, is to take down Assad and to break also a potential connection between Russia and Syria. If the Syrian government stays, Russia grows enormously in its influence and trade, not just in Syria, but throughout the region.
So this is as you're suggesting here, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, we are running low on time. You're saying this is a multi-prong approach, ultimately from the West, to target Syria, in turn target Iran, but also, as you say, in turn to target Russia. Could you explain that one more time for me?
Well, just that, you know, the Cold Empire has a deep and broad project. It's not just the regime change. Ultimately, it's who's going to have rising and special influence in the in the Middle East. Is it going to be the Americans and the Zionists still, or with all the defeats they've suffered recently? Is it going to be a new group, the Russians? Are they going to come in and certainly the Iranians and have enormous influence in that region? So the strategic, geopolitical aspects of this is enormous. And this boat, this ship, if we follow where the facts lead in the coming days, I think there's going to be a remarkable result in investigation of exactly what's going on.
Franklin Lamb, director of the NGO Americans Concerned for Middle East Peace, joining us live from Beirut. Thank you very much.